Detailed information can be found in the SOP Automatic Flight chapter. The FMA is on the top of the primary flight display and provides information about the active and armed autopilot and flight director modes. Furthermore, autopilot and flight director engagement status. The first column is for autothrust operation. It will be always blank since this configuration is not equipped with autothrust. The second column is lateral navigation. The third is vertical navigation. In the first row, active engaged modes can be seen, while armed modes are in the second blue row. The fourth column is for autopilot and flight director engagement status. In the last one, the source can be seen. Let's see them in more detail. The FCU is in the middle of the glare shield and is used for lateral control, vertical control, speed control, and autopilot flight director selection. Two course selector knobs at the left and right sides are used to select the required course on the HSI. Heading bug can be set by the heading selector knob. By selecting the heading mode, the autopilot will turn towards and follow the heading bug. Be careful, the turn will be initiated towards the heading bug to the closest direction. Nav mode selection can be done in both VLOC or GPS mode. In VLOC, the VOR or localizer signal will be followed. Note: in case of VOR, the selected course will be maintained. In GPS mode, the active GPS flight plan will be followed. Lateral navigation mode is not operative in this configuration. Approach mode is used to fly an ILS or LPV approach. In order to follow the vertical glide path or glide slope, it should be engaged. By pressing the CPL button, the flight director autopilot source can be changed. Information received from left seat pilot's HSI. Let's change to the right and back to the left. Alt mode use altimeter baro setting from the selected side. By pressing the FD button, the flight director will be engaged. By default, the most basic roll and pitch mode will be engaged. Although flight director can be turned off by pressing the button on the FCU, the pilot must use the red autopilot disconnect button on the yoke to turn off the flight director. In this simulator, autopilot cannot be operated without flight director. By pressing the AP button, both autopilot and flight director will be engaged. Roll and pitch are the default modes. By pressing the autopilot disconnect button once, autopilot will be disengaged. By pressing again, flight director will be disengaged. Vertical speed mode maintains the instantaneous vertical speed at which the VS button was pressed. Be careful! In VS mode, the aircraft's pitch is being set in order to maintain the required vertical speed. Airspeed must be carefully monitored and, if required, power should be adjusted. Vertical navigation and yaw damper are not operative in this configuration. In pitch mode, the required pitch angle can be selected by means of the pitch wheel. Be careful, moving the wheel immediately activates pitch mode regardless of the previous engaged mode. IAS mode maintains the instantaneous indicated airspeed at which IAS button was pressed. Be careful, in IAS mode the aircraft's pitch is being set in order to maintain the required airspeed. Let's summarize the vertical speed and indicated airspeed mode. In VS, the vertical speed is fixed, maintained by the autopilot by changing the pitch, while the indicated airspeed varies based on the actual power available. In IAS mode, it is the opposite, so autopilot sets the pitch in order to keep indicated airspeed fixed, and the vertical speed is the function of the power available. IAS selector knob is not operative in this configuration, and of course the same is applicable to the auto thrust. By pressing the Alt button, Alt mode will be engaged. This mode maintains the altitude at which Alt mode was engaged. Alt mode use altimeter baro setting from the selected side. Alt change arms the Alt mode. If we want to level off at a pre-selected altitude without pressing the Alt button, Alt change mode should be used. First, the required altitude should be selected by using the altitude selector knob. Then, by pressing the Alt change button, the Alt change mode will be armed. If the aircraft reaches the pre-selected altitude, Alt mode will be automatically activated. Prior to takeoff, the heading box should be set to runway heading, and heading mode should be selected on the FCU. Note that pitch mode has been activated because lateral and vertical mode cannot be engaged separately. Set pitch up by 9-10 degrees. At this point, initial climb altitude should have already been set. Finally, arm alt change. The flight director is ready for departure. If it is more convenient, nav mode can be used instead of heading mode if appropriate SID is available. Let's start the takeoff. Engine green, airspeed alive. Active climb gear up. After the climb configuration, engagement of IAS mode is preferred in order to maintain the appropriate climb speed. ATC tells to stop climbing at 2500 feet. New altitude should be set by the altitude selector knob. 1000 feet before the selected altitude, the altitude alerter provides oral alert. Pilot should call 1000 to go, regardless of the altitude alerter. Further climb is cleared. Set the altitude and press Alt change to arm Alt mode. Set the climb pitch by the pitch wheel and adjust power to maintain climb speed. IAS mode can be used. Let's see an approach. Localizer interception should be done in heading mode. By pressing the approach button, lock and glide slope modes will be armed. When the localizer mode is being engaged, localizer interception is automatic. If both alt change and glide slope modes are armed, the earlier will be captured. In our case, the glide slope. Note, if the glide slope mode is engaged, the selected altitude will not be captured. By pressing the go around button on the throttle, go around mode will be engaged. This mode reverts to the most basic roll and pitch modes. 7.5 degrees pitch up is the default. Roll mode will level the wings. In order to maintain the runway heading, heading mode, or if navigation aid is available, nav mode can be selected. Alt change mode will be armed as well. Caution: during go-around, power should be applied manually by the pilot. Let's summarize the possible engaged and armed modes. Engaged lateral modes can be roll, heading, nav, and lock. Engaged vertical modes are pitch, alt, IAS, vertical speed, and glide slope. Common mode is the go-around. Lateral armed modes are nav and lock. Vertical are glide and alt change. I hope this video helps you to master the autopilot. If you have any note or comment, please don't hesitate to tell me. I wish you safe landings.